My friends, I am Vivian McPeak, and this is Hempresent. If you have feedback or would like to suggest a guest or topic for Hempresent, email me at hempresent@gmail.com. I greatly enjoy hearing from you, the listener. Marlo Richardson is a businesswoman, a serial entrepreneur, and the founder and CEO of 4 cannabis businesses, including Tremendo and Just Mary, lifestyle cannabis brands based out of California. She spent nearly 2 decades of her professional career managing at the executive level in the areas of entertainment, law, public and media relations, social media management, marketing, advertising, and crisis management, creating and overseeing media content in television and film, large-scale events, clients, and building relationships with stakeholders in the entertainment industry and government. Marlo was a 2015 gubernatorial appointee by California Governor Jerry Brown, chairing a state of California enforcement section of over 250 sworn and civilian personnel, and she was recently selected to serve on the California State Bar Board, governing ethics and professional conduct. I've invited her here today for an important conversation about all of that and more. Welcome, Marlo, to Cannabis Radio.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivian, for having me.
My pleasure. Wow, you are amazing. Do you ever sleep? Let's start off with you telling us a little bit about your history. You have already accomplished so much. From where did you get your business acumen and drive?
Honestly, I'm not sure where I got the drive from other than just knowing that I wanted to have a pretty decent life. And unfortunately, I live in Los Angeles, California, so that's pretty difficult to do with just one income. And I think for the majority of my adult life, being single and just having the time to explore different passions of mine, I guess that's kind of how I got started and just testing the waters and seeing what it was that I really enjoy to do.
I was born and raised in LA, and I just want to say what you just said totally mirrors the conversation that Brasco and I just had before the show. I understand that your mother's pain condition initially influenced you to become involved in cannabis. Can you tell us some of that story?
Yes. So it's kind of odd. I spent a lot of my adult life in law enforcement, actually, and I retired as a lieutenant. And so I kind of had this preconceived notion of cannabis, and, we're kind of brainwashed to think that it's bad because it's illegal. And I never really took the time to do my own research previously. So my mother had probably the most excruciating pain that she'd ever felt. She said it was worse than childbirth. So I can't imagine how much pain she must have been in, but got to a point where she had trouble walking. And turns out she needed full hip replacement surgery. So I had a friend that recommended these different CBD and THC infused salves. And so she started to use them. And it was really the only thing that relieved her pain and allowed her to sleep at night. So I started doing research and started understanding all of the health benefits. And it really blew my mind as to how I previously thought of it. And I'm just really glad that I came around, because I was introduced to a friend of a friend who had a business that needed a security plan in order to get his license. And with my background, in law, I was able to put together a security plan for him in order to get licensed. And that was in the Palm Desert area. So I became interested and started looking into the Los Angeles area, and it was not yet open. And he was supposed to call me and let me know when I could apply for Los Angeles. And when he called me, it was literally the last day that the applications could be submitted, within the last hour. So I put together a company, got an EIN and applied, and was immediately, submitted, got an invoice.
You mentioned you spent nearly 20 years as a law enforcement manager, I believe.
Yes.
What does a law enforcement manager do, and what was that transition like to cannabis? I mean, was it awkward with your comrades, or did they kind of get it, or a little of both?
Well, no, it wasn't awkward at all. And I think at this point in the world, I think everybody gets it, even the people that don't want to legalize it yet. I think they get it. I think it's more of a formality. in terms of government trying to decide how they're going to monetize it for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I see as the bigger picture in terms of legalizing it or not legalizing it. I don't believe in the whole ideal of it being a gateway drug. To say that cannabis is a gateway drug is to say that, you know, smoking a cigar is going to turn into crack. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. I don't believe I ever thought that way. My understanding, again, being in law enforcement, and you asked what being a law enforcement manager was, I was a lieutenant. So in law enforcement, similar to the military, you get to a certain point and you become what they consider a manager, not a supervisor, but a manager. So that's what I did. And I believe everybody understood. Once I was done with law enforcement, I was completely done. It was a sigh of relief being able to kind of create my own destiny and not have all of the rules and regulations that I was forced to abide by for so long.
Mm-hmm. Marlo, the cannabis industry, like a lot of industries in America, is predominantly comprised of white men, although that's somewhat been changing. What have your experiences been as a woman of color ganjapreneur, and what unique obstacles or challenges in your mind have you had to overcome to see the success that you've had so far?
I absolutely agree with you. First of all, I am typically the only person of color and then female person of color when I go to cannabis events where executives are involved. It's kind of sad, but I'm not sure. I'm not really sure how I feel about it because, to be honest with you, that's most industries. You know, unless you're talking about the NBA. You know, being a person of color and being in a particular industry, especially when you're talking about something at a higher level or something that pays really well, we're typically the minority in that aspect. So unfortunately, I'm kind of used to being in that position.
Have you received, have you been embraced by the cannabis community in general, or have you felt pushback or obstacles, or what's your experience been being in that unique position that you're in? I mean, and you're really a leader. I mean, you're a great role model for you know, other women of color and people of color, I think. But what's that been like for you?
You know, Vivian, that's a really good question. And if I'm being honest with myself, I really try not to focus on that part. And I just
Mm-hmm.
try to do a good job and, you know, let my work speak for itself. My name, Marlo, Marlo. I think when people see my name in an email or, you know, on a website that does not necessarily have my photo, they probably have no idea, you know, whether I'm a male or female or black, white, or green. I don't think I have one of those names where someone could look at it and say, that's who this person is. And so I think it's typically a surprise when people do find out that I'm a black female. So I don't think I've seen any pushback because of it.
Right.
When I do have meetings, I do believe that at times I have to put my best foot forward. And I've always been the type of person that makes sure that I know everything that there is to know about it because I am, you know, a surprise. And I don't ever want to be looked at as someone that was given this opportunity because of that, but someone that's earned it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Can I ask, how's your mother doing now?
She is doing great. She's got a new hip and she's like Superwoman and she's really doing great.
That's really good news. I want to dive into your cannabis businesses after this first break that's coming up. But first, the cannabis industry is a hodgepodge of constantly changing regulations and restrictions. You've had such a career. You've been a committee member of the State Bar of California, Public Safety and Justice Chair for Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, and so much more. How challenging is the regulatory framework of California's cannabis model in your mind, and how well have your other positions prepared you to navigate the complicated cannabis legal environment there?
Man, you ask great questions.
Thank you.
I will say that having a background with laws, rules, and regulations is what has actually helped me to succeed in this business, whether it's applying for the applications or the constant changing of the different rules and the laws, it is extremely difficult to keep up with. It's almost like being an accountant. And if you know any accountants or have any knowledge in dealing with them with your taxes, every year they're reading these huge books because something has changed. And if they don't stay on top of it, then they're kind of out of business because they can really screw you up if they don't know, what regulations are new or changed or different from what they were the year prior. And that's really what you see in the cannabis industry. The worst part of the cannabis industry's changing rules and regulations is that the employees don't always know what's going on. And it's very typical in government organizations where you have people at the top that are making decisions. And by the time it gets to the person that's expected to relay that to the end user or the customers or the clients, it's confusing, it's convoluted, it's not exact. And so I've had a lot of trouble with just dealing with, the average person. So I typically ask to speak to a manager because I've had my accounts and licenses and things that were extremely vital to the success of my business kind of compromised because someone on the back end didn't keep up with what they were supposed to be doing. So I definitely believe that my background has prepared me for the success of the cannabis industry.
Well, I've done 250 interviews and no one has ever articulated that one point that you just made about the right hand not knowing what the left hand's doing. And I see that here in Washington State with our state liquor and cannabis board so frequently that the legislature makes these new laws, and our lawyers have to explain sometimes to the officials in charge what those laws actually mean because they have an incorrect interpretation.
Yes.
And it's an interpretation, right?
Exactly.
Fascinating. And that whole dynamic of the regulatory structure and the accounting and everything is probably why it's easier for these white men who are already in the corporate sector to just take all the money they already have and get involved in cannabis, and that creates a barrier for everybody else.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of companies, when you talk about social equity programs, there's a lot of companies and businesses that pride themselves on helping social equity applicants get their foot in the door. They, for the most part, I want to believe that they're really doing that social equity applicant justice. But from what I've seen, when the law only requires that the social equity applicant receives 51%, and they're talking in terms of ownership of the business, I myself am a social equity applicant, so I'm very well versed in what is supposed to happen. And what I've seen happen and what I've had offered to me is someone have, another company will come and so-called help you get into the cannabis industry. They'll give you 51% of ownership in the business, and then they will have their attorneys write up a contract that basically eliminates you from having any say-so on the business, any oversight, any management. And then they start charging all of these fees. Well, we're going to employ our people. It's going to cost this amount. It's going to cost that amount.
And by that time, a typical corporate maneuver.
Absolutely. And so by the time the social equity applicant actually sees $1, they're getting probably 2% of what was supposed to be 51%. So when you're looking at it from a monetary standpoint, they're really losing, but they don't know any better or don't have any other options. So it's just a really unfortunate situation, but you're absolutely right. There are people that have the corporate background, had the money, and were able to hop right in and excel.
I'm talking to Marlo Richardson. We're going to take our first break and come right back. Don't go anywhere.
Time to roll out for the people that let us Hempresent. Hang loose. We're coming right back.
We're back on Hempresent with Marlo Richardson. Marlo, you are the founder and CEO of 4 cannabis businesses. What can you tell us about them? Can you describe them maybe one by one and what products or services you offer?
Sure, absolutely. So the primary business is called Greenwood and Company. And Greenwood and Company basically serves as the license holder for all of my entities. I have an indoor cultivation where we have approximately 200 lights. We basically do our own clones. We have our own mother plants, and we produce exotic and, for the most part, pretty high-end cannabis flower. I have a manufacturing company where we do not actually own any machinery to create any types of distillates or live resin, but it does allow me to infuse pre-rolls and make beverages, which is part of some of the other brands that I do. I also have a cannabis distribution company. The distribution company allows me to brand and package all of the cannabis that I have, whether it's flower, whether it's pre-rolls, infused pre-rolls, beverages. And in creating the brands is kind of an ancillary business that I've been able to create with other people because I have the vertically integrated companies to be able to provide them with flower, provide them with any type of cannabis product that they want to brand. And I allow them to have their own company where they aren't touching the actual plant. And I facilitate any and all packaging, allow them to market and sell. And then we would then distribute it to either the end user or a retail outlet. The fourth company is a cannabis delivery company. So we're licensed to deliver straight to consumer. So if I'm packaging my own brands, I can deliver it direct to consumer, or through the distribution, I then can take it to a retail outlet.
Wow, that's great that California allows you to do that. Here in Washington State, we don't have that vertical model, and you can only have one license of one kind.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, we were one of the first to legalize, and I think it really held us back because we just can't catch up with anybody. Marlo, what advice might you have for people of color, and especially other women of color who are considering entering into the cannabis industry? What would you want them to be aware of while entering the industry, specific maybe to their identity?
I would say, really work with people that have your best interest at heart, not just with people that are out for money or, ownership per se. But there are enough people that are interested in getting into the cannabis industry. I think that a person interested really has a lot of homework to do. I think there's a lot of regulatory knowledge that a person should have before trying to get in because it's expensive and they don't give you refunds. I applied for a license in another county and they made it very clear up front. And I'll be honest with you, I thought I'd be a shoo-in because it was based on experience in running cannabis companies. And I felt like I have enough experience and can articulate that in an application where a board of people would say, oh, okay, she's doing A, B, and C, and she would be a good fit here. And not only did I not get that license, but they rated my application so low. I felt like that might have been one of those barriers to entry. Maybe they looked me up and said, oh, no, we don't want her here. But I was unable to recover any of the money that I put into applying for that license. And it cost me over $20,000. So you definitely want to know what you're doing. And if necessary, work with someone that has success in getting licenses before you put your money and heart into getting into the cannabis industry.
Many states, including California, have instituted social equity programs, which you actually referred to before the first break. They're meant to help, to deal with the racial and other inequities and assist women and people of color to participate in the cannabis industry in managerial and ownership positions. In your mind, I think you already said those programs are not working as well as they could. What could the state do different? How could those programs do a better job at social equity?
So I think if they really want to help applicants and, get them into the cannabis industry and kind of assist them with any type of, criminal background or any type of war on drugs history that they may have had in the past, they need to put their money where their mouth is. There's no way you can have an effective social equity program when the minute a social equity applicant submits their documents, they're given a $24,000 invoice. What person do you know that's been incarcerated or truly affected by the war on drugs that, can pay a $24,000 bill within 10 days? It's just not practical, but that's what they have. And that's what they're offering, in regards to social equity. And then they offer these, sometimes these incubator programs where investors get to meet potential social equity applicants. And again, you get into these situations where you've got these large corporations that promise you the world, and they're going to cover all of the expenses. And yes, they do that. They'll cover the expenses. They'll give you a title, but that's not ownership. The way that these social equity programs are designed right now, they're giving you a job. And I don't think that that's really in the benefit of a social equity applicant. If you're looking for something that is supposed to, give you some sort of ownership or help create generational wealth after you've been wronged for any sort of, cannabis offense.
And of course, communities of color have been disproportionately targeted, racially profiled, incarcerated through the entire history of prohibition. And we have really poor to no reentry assistance in general back into society, let alone getting involved in the cannabis industry. So, I mean, you're right. There needs to be funding and training and placement and those disproportionately impacted people, human beings, should be prioritized somehow. Do you agree?
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. When I applied, I was supposed to be a priority. It took me over a year. And I don't see that much of as much of a priority, but it's just not effective. But again, you have, low-level employees that are responsible for moving this process along. And it's a check for them. It's not set up by people that really care to make sure that the program is a success. These people don't care if I win or lose, or, they care less. They're going to get their check, and
the sooner they get you out the door, the sooner they can get back to what they were doing.
Exactly.
Right. I'm talking to Marlo Richardson. We're going to take one more break and come back with our final question, so don't go anywhere.
Time to roll out for the people that let us Hempresent. Hang loose. We're coming right back.
And we are back one more time on Hempresent with Marlo Richardson. Marlo, I'm just so impressed with everything that you've got going on, and all the great, perspective that you've been adding to this show today. While we still have a few moments left, what final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with? What last things would you like to tell them about your businesses?
I just really want to say that this is probably one of the best opportunities that I've had in my life. I have completely fallen in love with the cannabis industry, the people that I get to work with, the ability to learn and teach people, just everything about the plant has just been an incredible experience. I learned how to de-leaf the other day. I'm not sure if you know what that means, but we're 3 weeks away from pulling down one of our first indoor grows. So we have flower coming, and just seeing the process of making sure that it's quality product, making sure that it's properly tested. What I really want to focus on right now is to just let people know how important it is to use licensed companies and to buy their cannabis products from reputable retailers and licensed retailers. And the reason for that is the testing. And what I've learned is a lot of cannabis products that are on the black market, or the traditional market, as they call it, they have a lot of heavy metals, and they have a lot of things that are really dangerous to our health. And the plant is so great, and it's so helpful to so many people, that you really want to get what's good for you, so why not just buy it from a dispensary, opposed to, I don't know where people buy it from if they don't buy it from licensed places. But that's really the main reason, to me, that's a real benefit in buying from licensed retailers. And so I have a couple of brands that hopefully one day you will get to see them in the state of Washington. Just Mary, which is my personal brand. It's a flower line. We sell ounces by the can. So for people that don't want to have to keep going to the store, it's kind of like a Costco model. We have Tremendo, which is a higher end brand that's all exotic quality pre-rolls, vape pens, and flour. We also have a couple of beverages that are going to be coming out, one by Treehouse Blends, my partner, Tim Brown from Florida. He's got a great tea-based infused beverage that is absolutely amazing. And we have another one called Homeschool. It's more of an upscale. Instead of bringing a bottle of wine to a dinner party, you bring Homeschool. So that's going to be coming out very soon. And my goal is to be able to create these products here in California. And hopefully they do so well that other distributors in other states are dying to bring it to you guys. So that's my goal.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
my goal.
Marlo, I'm just so thankful to have you on the show today. You've given so much great information. I just wish you the best of luck in everything you do.
Thank you, Vivian. I appreciate that.
All right. Hempy Trails. That concludes this installment of Hempresent on Cannabis Radio. When it comes to prohibition, you've got the right not to remain silent. Activism requires a voice. Find your voice. Speak up for justice because resistance is fertile. The Hempresent intro music is 7 Mile Beach by Joanne Rand, and the outro music is Take Back the Plant by Stickerbush. See you next week, folks. Stay strong.
Marijuana, THC, sweet sativa, Dico Queen, Sintonia, Delta 9, smoke the ganja all the time.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.